In our last episode, a silent servant stepped into history. He was unknown to most, until the bells of St. Peter's Basilica echoed across the world, announcing his name, Pope Leo XIV. But how does a man go from the mountains of Peru to the highest spiritual corridors of Rome? What is the path between obscurity and the throne of the Catholic Church? How do you build influence not through power, but through presence? Today we follow his return to Rome, not for ambition, not for recognition, but for obedience. He didn't seek titles. He responded to a calling. This is the road before the vote, the whispers that began shaping his destiny, long before the white smoke rose into the sky. What if the most powerful man in the world was someone almost no one expected? What if silence shaped a legacy that would lead over 1 billion souls? Today's story isn't just history. It's a warning, a revelation, a beginning. On May 8, 2025, the bells of St. Peter's Basilica echoed across the world. White smoke rose into the Roman sky, and a man stepped into history. His name, Robert Francis Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV. Some names are whispered long before they're spoken aloud. In the days before the vote, his name began to rise not with ambition, but through presence, through silence, through a history of showing up where others did not. He wasn't known for words. He was known for listening, for walking with those forgotten, for choosing stillness until Rome could no longer ignore him. He rarely spoke first, but when he did, even cardinals leaned in. Inside Rome's marble corridors, choices were being shaped not by power, but by presence. He walked slowly, never with noise. He didn't campaign. He listened, and in that stillness his influence grew, not as a contender, but as someone who couldn't be ignored. Inside Vatican walls, names were whispered, expectations stirred. Some hoped for a bold reformer, others for a traditional guardian. But Robert, he remained still. His name was not at the center of conversations. He wasn't among the most spoken, and yet something unseen was unfolding. In rooms filled with ambition and prayer, one thing was becoming clear: the path was narrowing, and destiny, quiet as it was, had already begun to choose. Long before the world knew his name, his journey had already begun in silence, in service, in shadows. He wasn't born in a palace, nor raised to seek a throne. Instead, he walked through dusty streets, spoke with the broken, and listened more than he preached. In a world chasing power, he chased meaning. Behind the cassock stood a man shaped by time, by trials, by truth. His name was Robert Francis Prevost. But before Rome whispered his name, he belonged to places far from gold, far from glory. And in that distance, something sacred was being built. In 2014, Rome called him again. Not for the spotlight, but for trust. He was appointed to the Congregation for Bishops, where names are reviewed and futures are shaped. While others spoke loudly in the halls, he listened. In silence, he studied files that shaped dioceses around the world. Years passed. In 2023, he was named prefect of the Dicastery for Bishops, a role that whispers near the Pope's ear. He never asked for influence, but influence came. By 2025, his presence had reshaped rooms, not by ambition, but by steady spiritual clarity, and Rome had been watching all along. The air was still, but something had already begun to rise, not in sound, but in certainty. The bells rang once again, not for tradition, not for protocol, but for something deeper. The smoke rose white, soft, undeniable, and millions watched in silence. But Rome had already made peace with the choice. On that day, the man who never sought the crown stepped into the light, not as Prevost, but as Leo XIV, chosen not for ambition, but for presence. And the world finally understood what Rome had been hearing all along. Thank you for walking with us through this journey. The world now knows his name, but history is not written by announcements. It's written by choices. And in the next chapter, we'll step into the weight of the white to see not just the man who was chosen, but the man who must now choose. Subscribe to CuriousVerse and join us as the story continues.